So let's get going. Just a quick agenda overview. We're going to run through some logistics quickly. And then I wanted to kind of share an overview about Grin. Many of you guys have been following some of my lectures over the last couple of years. And, from time to time, as Grin Remote Monitoring went live, I'm getting questions about how this is tied to some of the other messaging that I've been putting out there. And I wanted to really share that and share our timeline. Remote monitoring is one part of Grin, but we do have a lot of big plans for the future. I then wanted to run through an actual demo. I want to show you kind of the doctor side of the platform, how you can best utilize that, the patient side of the platform, how they're going to utilize that. And we're going to use our very own Pamela to run a quick live demo of her taking a scan and then sending it over to me as her doctor and show you how that works on my side of the platform. And then, of course, the most important part, Q&A, to answer all of your questions so that we can get you guys onboarded and utilizing very, very quick. Just a quick little bit of housekeeping. Many of you guys have your scopes already, which means you've already created your account. Others have signed up and then gotten an email back from Grin to now go create your account. We can't ship the scopes until you create your account. So you've got to make sure to go to providers.getgrin.com and then sign up. That's where you're going to input your address or the address that you want the scopes to be sent to so that we can send you your scopes. All right. Our goal is to get these in your hands ASAP so that you can get them out to your patient's hands as well. So if you haven't done so, take a couple of minutes and do so. Providers.getgrin.com and use the email address that you've been interacting with Grin, because that's the email address that we've essentially given access to this site. As far as this webinar goes, stay on mute for now, but you can keep your video on. I like to see people's reactions. And then any questions that you have along the way, you can type it in the chat panel. And then when we get to the Q&A at the end, I'll have everybody unmute and we can kind of discuss, but I'll also read from the chat panel as needed as well. Okay, so now as far as an overview of Grin, Grin really was Grin was a brainchild of mine in conjunction with my co-founders, as over the last couple of years, all of us have been going through some of the pain points of what the heck is going on the market today, right? I mean, we're all part of these Facebook forums where many of us get up on our soapbox beating our chest about how bad, these direct-to-consumer companies are and what they're doing to the specialty. But the reality is that we need to be able to fight that. We need to be able to go toe-to-toe with some of these larger corporations that are out there now, these startups, and be able to bring consumers what they're looking for and educate our patients and consumers as to why perhaps it's dangerous to take orthodontists and doctors out of the care loop. And so Grin, our original purpose was to do exactly that. Number one, we understood very clearly from the market that unfortunately, traditional orthodontics wasn't a perfect solution for a substantial amount of the market. Why? Because they were looking for, yes, a lower price, but the reality is, I will tell you from our market research and from what I've seen, even in my own practice in New York, as I was getting more and more Smile Direct Club patients through my practice that obviously were maltreated by them, convenience was even a larger factor than price, right? I had very wealthy New Yorkers. I had I remember one specific ER physician that was in my chair, went through Smile Direct Club, now was only occluding on central incisors, as we all know is generally the clinical case. And I looked him straight in the eye. I'm like, why the hell would you think about doing something like this? And he's like, I went through braces when I was a kid. I do not have the time in my life to come in every single month. So it wasn't even just cost, but rather convenience. And so these predatory companies have come around and said, okay, clearly there's a major gap here. There's this huge side of the market that's looking for price and convenience. Orthodontists are just not giving it to these patients. We're going to capitalize on that. And we, of course, know the sequela. We know that touch points are important. And so Grin's original come to market was to really be for orthodontists, by orthodontists, to leverage technology, to give us doctors technology and a journey to reduce the complexity and cost of treatment for patients, but connecting patients, bringing them back to our chairs. And so the overall innovation is number one, a multi-sided platform. Obviously, we're going to talk extensively today about the remote monitoring side of things, all enabled by a mobile app, but even more so. And, ultimately today we're talking specifically in the world of remote monitoring, but in the future, Grin will be bringing added functionality, including bringing patients back to our chairs, to your chairs, putting new patients in your chairs that otherwise would have potentially gotten lost to some of these other avenues of orthodontic care. Now, some of you already have the remote monitoring device in your hands. Our goal was to keep it as simple as possible. Even in my own practice, over the course of the last 2-3 years, I have attempted to utilize other remote monitoring devices. And the key problem was patient utilization. Patients would get the device and then never use them because it was big, it was bulky, it was difficult, and it wasn't quite giving me the full views of everything I needed to see. So my goal number one was it's got to be simple, it's got to be easy, it's got to be the kind of thing that my 12-year-old can pick up off of the countertop and with about 1 minute of instruction be able to pop it in his mouth and give me exactly what I'm looking for remotely through his mobile device. And that's exactly what we've achieved. We can talk a little bit about the functionality to come. And absolutely, we are working on taking this two-dimensional video, turning it into 3D, and then capitalizing on that and using AI and computer learning so that we can have so many more bells and whistles and really even further streamline and make your practice more and more efficient. But again, always in the realm of keeping it simple, keeping it as simple as possible. Now, the story of Grin takes a little bit of a turn because of COVID, right? So we're developing this end-to-end solution. Our goal was really to come to market in the beginning of 2021. And we were starting our beta tests in about February, March, when COVID hit. Everybody goes into quarantine. And now we couldn't even get patients into the orthodontist chair for that first visit where they would get an oral exam, a scan, et cetera. And what we very quickly realized is that even within my own practices, my associates were telling me, and I experienced myself, I couldn't get patients to really, unfortunately, come into the practice. And there were patients with braces on, active orthodontic appliances. And of course, as we all know, that's problematic. So everybody turned at the time, think back to the beginning of, well, even through the end of March, June, et cetera, towards teleorthodontics to some extent. So what did we do? We started describing to the patients, oh, you've got to send us these photos so that we can see what's going on in your mouth and we can talk you through what the next steps are. And this is the quality of photos that we were getting. We then shifted a little bit, and I know many of us did this, right, to starting to go onto Instagram and Facebook and show patients with spoons, this is how we want you to take pictures so that we can see into your mouth. And so we described it all to them. We sent them out all of these forms. We sent them the videos. But unfortunately, this was the kind of views that we were getting, completely useless, even with the spoons, even with the instruction, et cetera. And so, on Facebook, I'm sure we were all part of these little, posts where everybody was like, what is the best, i.e. worst picture that you were able to achieve from your patients during the pandemic? And so we started getting a lot of requests, both from companies, manufacturing partners, and also from orthodontists that knew about what we were building, saying to us, guys, we understand you're developing this remote monitoring technology. We need it today, right? Patients are in quarantine. We can't see them. We need a way to reach through their mobile devices into their mouths and be able to really continue to have responsible oversight. And so I really challenged my team to be able to bring this from the prototype level to the point in time where it's in many of your hands in a very, very short amount of time. As an orthodontist, I was never part of that entire, go-to-market process. And sometimes we have a tendency to criticize these big companies who make us promises about what they're bringing to market, and then it takes forever. I experienced it firsthand, and I can tell you that in the process of bringing this to market, my team has done an unbelievable job in really reducing the timelines that normally would certainly be in effect, and being able to run through regulatory, which is a huge one, manufacturing, et cetera, and get you those scopes in your hands today. And so Just as an oversight, before we delve deeper into remote monitoring, understand that Grin's mission still is bringing the delivery of orthodontic treatment back to you, the orthodontists, utilizing true innovation that actually benefits both us as doctors and our patients as well. And that's still the overall mission for Grin. We are still headed in that direction. Remote monitoring is the first offering, and we're just going to increase the tools that we bring you and the value that we bring all of our practices as we do so. And so first I want to start with a video asset that is what we call doctor facing. So this is really a quick video that just shows you the doctor, the functionality of the doctor web portal in how we're going to interact with our patients.
Welcome to Grin, the first comprehensive digital orthodontic platform that provides remote monitoring solutions in partnership with you, trusted local orthodontists. Easily invite new patients through your doctor web app. Patients will receive an email and be prompted to download the Grin app, available in both the App Store and Google Play. Once the invite has been sent, you can give your patient a Grin scope to begin their Grin experience. Patients can now self-scan in the comfort of their home, and you can remotely see into your patient's mouth as if they were in your chair for an in-person appointment. Customize scan frequencies based on your patient's needs, and communicate directly with patients at any time using the HIPAA-compliant in-app chat feature. Effectively monitor your patient's oral health from anywhere, reduce chair time, and ensure safety. Grin, great smiles, real orthodontists.
And so that was a quick run through of some of the functionality on the doctor side. So what I wanted to do is actually open up a doctor side platform, which I think you can all see now, and run through some of that as well. Now, one of the things that you saw, which is extremely important, is inviting your patient, okay? Realize that Grin is a medical device, and as such, we need to prescribe it to the patient. When you first download, when you first onboard onto the platform, I should say, because the doctor site is a web portal, there's gonna be nothing here. So the center of the screen will actually have a box to invite your first patient, okay? So number one, you're going to click on that and you will invite your first patient. Once that happens, the invite new patient is right over here. Okay, so it's up here. You're going to click on your name. You're going to click on invite new patient. And this is exactly what's going to pop up. You will populate it with the patient's name, the patient's email address. And then if you have one, the plan code, you're going to hit send. As soon as you hit send, the patient is going to receive an email. In that email, it's going to have all of the instructions and the link for them to download the app and then sign up to the app. The way I run this in my practice now is that patient gets bonded, patient gets their attachments placed for aligners, and very simply, generally they're in the chair and you're going over hygiene instruction, emergencies, how to brush their teeth, and all of that kind of stuff. Now Grin has become part of that. And so we have the computer chair side. While the patient is there, we're going to sign them up directly. And so this doctor web portal is open on every single one of my monitors, minimized, obviously. We have our practice management software, and the assistant will click on that, open it up, hit invite patient, invite the patient. Patient's in the chair, gets the email, clicks download, downloads the Grin app. If you have time, then you will also have the availability to run the patient through their first scan right there in person. Again, I in my own practice do a lot of same day starts. And so sometimes we just don't have that luxury, which is why we've made it so simple that the patient can do this on their own. But again, if you have the time, you might as well have them do that first scan in person right then and there. Now, getting back to the platform here, you can see on the left side, this is the list of patients. Directly in the center, once you click on a patient, is the patient's scans. And then on the right side is all of the chat functionality between the patient and the practice. In some practices, this is run by the doctor himself or herself. In other practices, this is run by a clinical coordinator, completely up to whatever you decide. Within the chat functionality, the patient can also send regular photos, selfies, etc. And then the center is really for utilizing the Grin scope and taking a true Grin scan. This button up here, Set Next Scan, is extremely important because this is where you as the doctor are going to prescribe exactly when you want the app to ping the patient and notify them when their next scan is due. And you have the ability to customize this completely, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, once every month, Or down here on the bottom, you can also choose an exact date. And you can modify this. So you can have a patient on every 28 days, and then you may notice something, perhaps their hygiene is bad, and you decide, you know what, you've got to take a new scan in 2 weeks because I want to check on your hygiene. And you can do so. So whatever you decide as a doctor, that's what you're going to schedule for your patient. And you can do that basically on the fly. The other thing is over here under your name is the account setting and therefore notification center. How you want to interact with the web portal, whether you want to get emails, whether you want to get texts, what you want to be notified about, new message, new patient, new scan, etc. I have everything checked off right now. One of my clinical coordinators running this so that the emails and the texts go to her. She deals with it. If there's a problem that needs to be elevated to me, she lets me know and I jump on the platform, and therefore I can deal with it just as well. So just some of the functionality within the app over there. Now, let's run through some use cases. We might as well. So this is a patient, for example, that this is a perfect, in my mind, use case, because this was a situation that if this patient didn't have Grin Remote Monitoring, this would have been patient coming into the practice, taking up chair time, patient wasting their time, and ultimately leaving probably angry that they had to come in. So over here in the chat, you can see that this patient sent us a photo and wrote to us, while attempting to remove it, while brushing my teeth, the bottom rack tore. So by rack, the patient means aligner. And if you click on this, you can see very simply that this is just an elastic hook, but the patient didn't know that. This was the kind of situation where the patient was given his aligners, and my associate or my assistants may have said, oh, at some point we may have you on elastics, but didn't delve further into it. And nobody described to this patient, and it happens, right? We have very busy clinical days. Nobody described to the patient that this was the hook where in the future you're going to need to wear elastics. And so the patient naturally saw this big gash and said, oh my goodness, my tray is torn. But now through the app, this was very, very easy to just very simply write to the patient, that looks fine. That's the hook cut out for your elastic. Everything's cool. Save the patient a visit, save agita, chair time, etc. Here's another patient, and this is a good example just to show how easy it is initially even to scan their teeth. So I'm going to show you this patient's first scan, which was actually done at home, because this was a patient that didn't have enough time in clinic to actually go through the scan, and then her second scan as well. And so let me bring this up pretty large. And so this is what you're seeing is an actual scan of the patient. Now, again, a little bit rocky because this is the first time the patient has ever attached the scope to the phone, attempted to take a scan, but you can see very easily that even though it's not as smooth as I would like it, I'm able to see the full mouth, 7:7. I'm able to capture the occlusal of the incisor so I can see just how crowded they are. I can look at arch wire engagement, etc. Check the occlusals of the upper as well, front to back, etc. And so this really just allowed for a very, very easy way to be able to reach through the patient's phone into their mouth. Now, this was the first scan. This was actually the day the patient was bonded, later on at night. And then this second scan that I'm going to show you now is this same patient about 3 or so weeks later. Actually, it would have been 28 days later. So here you could see already, and this is the second time the patient is actually putting this into their mouth. You could see it's smooth. The patient is able to get all the way around the bend. And just, a lot of us are orthodontists and we can't run through a webinar without looking at teeth. Look at how amazing those lower incisors look compared to where she started, right? So a significant amount of leveling and aligning in about 3.5 weeks or so. And of course, a very, very good, easy, simple scan. One more case that I wanted to show you. Here's a patient where along the way, as typical teenagers do, he popped a bracket, right? So instead of calling the office, emergency, all this stuff, very simply, and this was the kid doing it on his own, he's like, you know what, let me show you. And he grabs the scope. He started recording before he even put it into his mouth, and he simply popped the scope into his mouth. And now he's showing us, look, this is where this bracket is broken. This is what's going on. It's bugging me a little bit. So this, of course, is a situation where I can very clearly see I've got an E over here still. I have my 6. My 6 came off. And this was a very easy way to just communicate, you know what? You're going to take a nail clipper. You're going to cut the wire right over here. and you're done. You don't have to come in. That molar isn't doing a tremendous amount of moving at this point anyway. We're waiting for that E to be exfoliated. Make it nice and simple. Save the patient, save mom the agita of needing to come in for an appointment, and of course, saving us the chair time. So just a couple of use cases within the doctor portal of how we run things, and of course, the value that it's adding. Okay. And then of course I showed you a bunch of the different functionalities thereof. So jumping back to, excuse me, our slides. So what we've seen, of course, patient invite, you've got to invite that patient, and then the patient lists the scans, and then the chat functionality. We can zoom in and out of our scans. By the way, I don't know if I showed you, we can also pause it and run it so that we freeze on an occlusal shot, a lateral shot, whatever it is that we need to use, and then compare with another one. Customize scan frequencies per patient as needed, and then of course, how you as a practice want to be notified. Now we're going to turn to the patient side. From the patient side, first I'm going to show you a video that goes through the patient onboarding process.
Congratulations on starting your remote monitoring experience with Grin. After your local orthodontist invites you to the Grin platform and gives you a Grin Scope package, it's easy to get started. First, download the Grin app via the email sent from your doctor, or with the QR code in the instruction manual found inside the Grin Scope box. Launch the Grin app and follow the opening screens to create your Grin login. Your orthodontist sets customized scan frequencies, and the Grin app will send you notifications when it's time to scan. Make sure to follow the self-scan instructions from the Grin app. It will take you less than 1 minute to provide your orthodontist with all the information they need to remotely monitor your treatment. If you have any questions, use the secure in-app chat feature to communicate directly with your doctor. To clean your scope after each use, simply place it in the top rack of your dishwasher, or wash by hand using dish soap and warm water. Grin. Great smiles, real orthodontists.
So a quick, easy video just showing the patient, kind of talking them through their onboarding process, which again, a lot of it is going to be done in the practice, but we like redundancy. We like making sure that patients have it as easy as possible with as little friction as possible. And so, for example, you notice there when she opened the package, aside from the fact that when you invite the patient, they're going to get an email with the link to download the app, there's also a QR code. So if they haven't gotten to their email, they can just quickly scan the QR code and do the same thing as well. Now we've also got what we call the extraoral scanning tutorial. So this is, again, patient-facing, showing them outside of the mouth how to capture a good scan.
To complete the Grin self-scan, position the Grin scope over the phone's camera and tighten the strap. When you begin a scan, you will be guided to turn your phone horizontally. Then, standing in front of a mirror, turn your phone around and place your lips over the scope at the center of your mouth. Bite down, tap the record button on the screen, and follow the in-app prompts. Start by moving the scope all the way to the right to capture your right side. Then, move the scope all the way to the left to capture the left side. Your bite might attempt to open, but try to keep it closed. Now, return to the center, open your mouth wide, and point the scope at your bottom teeth. This creates nearly a 90-degree angle from above. Make sure the image includes your front teeth. Now, do the same for the top teeth. Once finished, you can view your scan and then select Upload Scan. Alternatively, you're welcome to rescan if needed. That's it. Well done.
So I figured just to show you exactly how that process runs, you can see it in real time. We're going to do a quick live demo. So my co-founder, Pamela, our COO, is going to be my guinea pig. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so that you get all of the tiles in Zoom. And if you click on her window, she'll pop up. She's going to take that scan, talk you through it to the extent that she can, because she's going to have something in her mouth. And then we'll jump back and look at my side of the platform.
Hi, everyone. So let's imagine that I'm Adam's patient and I received a notification to go ahead and take my scan. So I get my notification on my phone here and I launch the Grin app. So now I have the Grin app launched and I have a call to action to go ahead and take my scan. So all I need to do is to take my scope, simply connect it to my phone here. If some of you would like to kind of zoom into my rubric here on the Zoom call, it might make it easier for you to see. Here I have a call to action to start my scan. So I'll go ahead and click on it and I'll enter scan mode. Okay. I also have the option to see a video that shows me how to scan from an intraoral point of view. I'll go ahead and skip this video for this purpose and just jump into the demo of me scanning. So here we go.
Start your scan from the center and bite all the way down. Move slowly all the way to the right and keep your bite closed. Now move slowly all the way to the left while keeping your bite closed. Then move back to the center, open your mouth and capture the bottom teeth from above. Now capture the top teeth from below. Well done. Scan complete.
Great. So as you saw, this took 34 seconds exactly. I'll go ahead and upload my scan to the doctor. And while the system is doing that, I'll just tell you that there is more functionality here as a user that I can go through. So for example, I can look at my timeline of scans. And this is pretty cool because patients like looking at how they've at their progress, and they can look at the scans week by week or every 4 weeks, whatever the schedule that I received from my doctor to scan was. Adam, you should have received my scan now. I'll go ahead and show you that I could also send a image of myself. So for example, a selfie. I'll take a selfie of myself and go ahead and send it to my doctor as well. Or if I want to take a selfie of my broken aligner or a picture of my broken aligner, for example, or what have you. So yeah, I'll pass it over back to Adam, and thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I think everybody can see my screen now. So Betty Moore is Pamela. Of course, because of HIPAA compliance, et cetera, we have to, change all the names and all. And so this, as you could see, 1:27, I'm on the East Coast. This is the scan that Pamela just took. I can zoom in and I can look at it exactly the way I've showed you all of the other scans. So as you saw, she took the scan, it took about 34 seconds, hits upload. Within the next 20 seconds, essentially, it's on my side and I'm able to see every tooth in the mouth, 7 to 7, all the way around. I'm able to actually get a proper occlusal view, which, when it comes to, little twists and turns of the incisors, leveling and aligning is so important. I mean, Pamela's a great example of that. Her teeth look amazingly straight head on, but then when you see from the occlusal, there's some tiny little things that we need to fix, and we'll go from there. So that's her scan. And then of course, over here is chat functionality as well, the photos, et cetera, whatever they want to send. And this is, as she was saying, her selfie that she sent me. Okay, so let's go back to the slides. And of course, we've seen notifications, timelines, chat functionality from the patient's perspective, selfies, et cetera. Now, before we get to the questions, a little bit more on the information side. Now, remember that my goal today was really to get you guys familiar with remote monitoring. Grin's goal with remote monitoring is really just bringing something to you so that it can be beneficial to your patients. Number one, going through quarantine and even post-quarantine, as all of our capacity is pretty limited. I know in my practice in New Jersey, we used to see 80 patients a day, no problem. Now with temperature checks and the COVID forms and social distancing, we're seeing only about 50 to 60% of the traditional flow that we used to. And so chair time is at a premium. And so the more patients I'm handing Grin scopes to and pushing off their appointments, extending their appointments, the better off I am. And this is going to be on a doctor by doctor basis. I have a lot of doctors with aligners that are getting the patient in for attachments and IPR, as long as all of that's done in the beginning, handing the patient all of their aligners beginning to end and a Grin scope, and then doing weekly remote monitoring check-ins and everything completely remote until the end of their stages. And then what they're finding now, and again, this is on the early side of things because we just released this to the general population of doctors. We do have some beta testers, but they're seeing fewer refinements, and again, anecdotal completely, because you have weekly oversight, whether it's a clinical coordinator or the doctor themselves, making sure that patients are wearing their aligners. With brackets and wires, certainly patients that are in elastics, right? Why do I have to check an elastic patient every week or two, every month or two? This kid is going to either wear their elastics or not. All I need to see visually is how the bite is correcting. And so I'll hand a patient their class 2s. We instruct them on how to wear them, give them the Grin scope, send them home. They'll get an appointment in person when their bite is corrected and we're moving on to the next stage of treatment. So really just a lot of ability to streamline things within the office. So some little quick topics that we want to talk about: pricing, marketing material, very important one that we've put together for you guys. And then of course, some additional functionality. From a pricing perspective, our goal was simple. Our goal was to make it something that every practice can just adopt across the practice, right? I don't want it to be the kind of thing that every new patient that walks through your door, you have to sit down and do a mental calculation. Okay, is it worthwhile for this patient for me to remotely monitor part of their treatment, right? And I know with a lot of other remote monitoring solutions out there, it's kind of like a $200, $300 per patient nut that you have to consider. And some of the efficiencies inherent in remote monitoring exist even in not during treatment itself. So for example, observation on the front end of treatment, or retention on the back end of treatment. And if you're paying month by month per patient, it doesn't really make sense with a lot of these patients. And so what we wanted to do is create something very, very simple, where it's a pretty low monthly fee per practice to be onboarded onto the Grin platform and have access to the doctor app and to the patient app. And then on a case-by-case basis, patient-by-patient basis, it's $24 per scope. And so when you look at average practices, we're looking at a negligible amount per patient. And so you don't have to do this mental, conversation with yourself. It's just a matter of everybody in our practice now gets Grin Remote Monitoring, and we're going to be able to give you a ton of convenience and obviously also save a ton of overhead. And so, we take that mental calculation out of it. I know in my practice, we used to give every patient a water pick. The water picks were costing me, I remember precisely, it was $39 at the time. And I had no ROI on that. I mean, there was the moms were happy the day I gave the patient the water pick, and then they never used it. And in fact, once in a while, when I complained about their hygiene, they were like, oh, my water pick broke. Can I have another one? I'm sure you all go through the same pain points. So here's truly a very, very negligible per patient fee based on an average practice, where the amount of return on investment, changing the culture and the systems in your practice to now really severely reduce your overhead, so reduce chair time. This is where I see a huge benefit. On the other side of things, new patients that are coming to your practice or looking for your practice, our marketing team developed some really, really cute little, obviously, social media posts that you can utilize. And, we've got a whole bunch of different stuff from an assets perspective. And just to tell you a little bit of a story, I didn't get how important this was initially. We implemented Grin. Obviously, my practice was one of the betas, and we implemented it early on. And my associate calls me one day and says, Adam, you got to hear this story. I just had a mom in the chair, a mom in the consultation room, child in the chair for a consult. This is son number 2 for the mom. Son number 1 is being treated at another practice. COVID hit in March. This patient, child number 2, was seen in February by the general dentist, who said, I want you to go to an orthodontist. This kid needs ortho. COVID hits and mom says, no way in hell am I starting orthodontics right now. There may be a second wave. I'm going to push treatment off until 2021. Well, they all as a family go to a local birthday party for another child. I'm sure it was a socially distanced party. And the birthday boy has braces on, and he didn't have braces on, a couple of weeks prior. And this mom went to the birthday boy's mom and said, what on earth, you put Joey in braces? There's a pandemic going on. Doesn't make sense to now, put him into something where he's got to go to the orthodontist every month, et cetera. And the mom of the birthday boy says, Joey, go get your scope. And Joey runs upstairs and comes back down with the Grin scope, attaches it to the phone, shows everybody remote monitoring. And the mom, the new mom, is blown away. And now she's in my practice. So her older son's being treated by a competitor. The younger son, who she was going to push off till 2021, is now in the practice signing up for treatment because she was like, this makes so much sense. The fact that COVID's going on, I get it, but let's put his braces on. Now I have the tools to utilize at home in case there's a second wave, and we don't have to come in as many times, whether it's during COVID, after COVID. Moms have busy lives. This is an absolute huge value to the patients. And so this is where we started doing a little bit of our own local patient, marketing through, utilization of Grin and letting patients know that this exists and this is amazing. And it's actually going to give you a lot of value. And this is also going to help drive patients to your door to some extent. Now, before the Q&As, I often get a lot of questions about added functionalities. We're working on it. So far, everything that we've heard about, and I want to hear from you guys, things that you're looking for, added functionality. They're all things right now. Most everything that we've heard is in the pipeline, but we like hearing about it so we know what to prioritize and what not to. So it certainly is very, very important. So I'm going to turn it over to all of you. I'm going to stop sharing a second, make myself nice and big over here, so that we can look through chat. Anybody that has any questions, number one, hit the chat room. You can type it in if you're a little bit shy. If not, unmute and ask it. So I turn things over to you guys. I love it when I do such a great job and nobody's got any questions.
So Adam, I have a question.
Great.
When we are doing this because we're going to start using the scope pretty soon, as you know that. So for the aligner patients, do you guys recommend having two scopes with aligners or without aligners? How do you guys systemize that thing?
Great question. So one of the added functionalities coming up is for you to have the ability to check off as a doctor, the same way you can check when you want the scan, you can also check for a double scan, meaning that you're saying this is an aligner patient and I want 2 scans. And as you saw with Pamela, 34 seconds. So very easy and quick. So I, in my practice, have my patients doing a scan with aligners and a scan without their aligners. Right now, I'm specifying that at the beginning of treatment so that every time you get pinged for a scan, I want 2. We're going to automate that so it actually asks the patient to take both.
Okay, thank you.
Great question. Somebody asked, are we subscription-based or unit price also? So the way we've done this, right, we didn't want to be unit price to the extent where it becomes very expensive per patient. So the practice pays $199 a month, and then it's $24 per scope, which, like I said, ends up being a pretty relatively affordable per patient. But we don't like looking at it as a per patient because I've experienced in my own practice, anytime I onboard any innovation into the practice, if it's not adopted across the board, it's going to fail, right? Because I'm going to have one patient in, I have a chair, I have a bay of 5. I have one patient that's remote, one patient that's not, one patient that is, it gets too complicated from a systems perspective versus having everybody essentially on the same system. Somebody else asked if we can download pictures and save them onto our practice management software. You can. What we're working on is integration. So we are working with some of the bigger names out there from a PMS perspective so that we can even automatically integrate. And that's really where we want to go. And so, obviously we're going to mark that down that somebody else voted for that because this is added functionality that we're certainly working on and coming down the platform. The next amazing question, which is another added functionality that we're working on, is have you used this for NPE, new patient exams, who want a virtual consult, and how has that been? So we have currently a bunch of users that are beta testing this. Right now, the way they're doing it is they have their own website and lead capture platform. They capture that lead and the patient inputs their address. They ship them a scope. Patient takes a scan with the scope. So this way, instead of just the regular selfies that are out there, you're getting a much better view of exactly what's going on. You're able to see their malocclusion. You're able to see their occlusal views. And now you can virtually talk to the patient over the platform and give them a much better idea of cost, length of treatment, et cetera. So we have doctors that are beta testing this. We are working on increasing that functionality to have it as part of Grin virtual consults, where you can also send a patient asynchronous videos that basically capture you looking through their video and showing them exactly what's going on in their mouth and what it's going to take to correct it. So this is all coming in the very, very short term. So fantastic question. Do I have a designated person to handle this program in my office? How much time do you feel you are carving out to review cases each week? When I started, up until about 2 weeks ago, it was me. The time that I was carving out was very, very minimal because I generally am very responsive on my phone. So as soon as I got a text that somebody did something on the platform, I clicked on the link. It opens up my web portal. It is mobile enhanced, so I'm able to do it from my phone. So the doctor side currently, we're working on it, but currently is not an app. The patient side is an app. The doctor side, though, through my phone, I can very easily access and look through everything, watch the videos, and text my patients. And so I did it right then and there. From a timeline perspective, we're talking about probably 20 to 30 minutes a week total spread out over time. Now, especially because I'm so busy with everything going on in Grin and onboarding more and more doctors, I have my clinical coordinator dealing with it. And so far, she loves it. She finds it much, much easier than dealing with the front desk constantly, where a patient calls the front desk leaves her a message. She has to call the patient back and all of that. So she right now is loving it, and she feels like it's actually decreasing the amount of time that she's had. The next question was, I'm seeing my aligner patients every 12 weeks, and why see the scan every 4 weeks, which add extra work? What are your thoughts? I leave that completely up to you. What I find personally is that a huge area where my aligner cases go wrong is compliance. Even patients that are very good, as time goes on, they start slipping a little bit, right? And if I'm looking at them every 12 weeks, if something starts slipping at week 4, it gets magnified with every tray from tray 4 to tray 12 versus if they take a quick scan, not even every 4 weeks. I have some doctors that are having the patient scan every time they change their aligners. In my practice itself, I have some patients that are doing this on their own. They're like, I want to send you a scan every time I change my aligner. Great. My clinical assistant reviews the scan. Again, it's 34 seconds and then types back to the patient, amazing, keep going, right? Or, oh, you know what? You're doing great, but you have a little bit of plaque in this region. Brush it a little bit better because we don't want that trapped under your tray and to notice, gum recession, yada, yada. I mean, we're talking about a very insignificant amount of time. And my thought is that if you're really having weekly oversight, which is going to increase cooperation and reduce refinements, and it's really less than a minute of your clinical coordinator's time, there's huge value in that. Realize we are working on functionality where even your clinical coordinator is not going to have to put in their input, where the app itself will essentially give the patients the looking great, keep on going, or, ooh, something's not quite tracking, wear this current tray an additional 3 days, and then send us a new scan. So I leave this up to your own clinical, whatever your decision is, you do it. If you're seeing patients now every 12 weeks and that's what you like, keep on doing that. If you're seeing, if you want a little bit more oversight, that works beautifully as well. And again, it's all anecdotal, but in my mind, if I have a little bit more oversight and it's not a full visit in the doctor chair, it's not patients traveling to come see you, I'm going to get a little bit better cooperation, I feel, because if the patient knows that they have to answer to somebody at the end of the week or before they're able to move into their next tray, I think that's just going to benefit us to some extent. Okay, but great questions. Anybody else have any other question we haven't answered? Beautiful. How perfect. We're exactly at 1:45. Excellent. Well, if any of you guys have any other questions, you can always reach out to me, adam@get-grin.com, or you can also hit up support@get-grin.com. So support@get-grin.com, adam@get-grin.com. 2 easy ways to get in touch with myself or the team to answer any other practices. Actually, somebody quickly asked, how would you recommend integrating existing patients into the practice and fees? So again, right now, I don't necessarily charge patients for Grin Remote Monitoring. I think that, so my practice in New Jersey, we run about 400 new patients a year. And so if I really do the calculations, it costs me about $30 a patient. For $30, if I save even one visit, my chair time in New Jersey is $236 an hour. So imagine for a second, so yes, my overhead increases per patient by $30, but it decreases by hundreds and potentially thousands of dollars. So I'm not passing this along to the patient or charging them. As far as existing patients, as soon as I got my first shipment of scopes from Grin, from manufacturing, I handed out to every single patient that walked through my door. Because even patients that are in existing patients in practice, I was seeing them every 8 weeks. With the Grin scope, I push them to every 12 weeks, unless there's something specific that I need to tweak, and that's with traditional braces and wires. If they're elastic cases, I in the beginning push them out to 4 months. Here's your class 2s. I'm making your appointment in the computer for 4 months. I want you to scan every month. Now I'm actually giving them the scope, or they're in the scope already. I'm giving them elastics and saying, you're going to send me a video every month, and I'm going to tell you, or my clinical coordinator is going to tell you when you need to come back into the practice. And then, of course, from a perspective of aligners, you can really attachments IPR, and you really don't necessarily have to get them into the chair, unless, of course, you need to add a little bit of IPR or something like that until they're on our stage. Quick question from Dr. King. How do we know that the scopes will never be on back order? That is an amazing problem that I want to have. But no, having said that, we have amazing manufacturing in place. We have thousands of scopes right now. We shipped already 4,000. We have thousands more. And we have an amazing ops team that will make certain that it will not become a problem. So don't worry too much about that. But again, I do have practices that are all in, and they've ordered 200 scopes. We've shipped them 200 scopes. They know what their patient flow is and new patient number per year, so they know that they're covering it. And then some doctors know their new patient number, but now they're also handing it to existing patients that are in retention, for example, because they're like, I don't want to get them in for retainer visits. Here's the scope, and retain them. So we've been very, very quick to turn around new scopes to them in a very short amount of time. So this is on us to make sure that it doesn't become a problem, and I'm very confident that it won't. But great questions again. Okay. Having said that, again, I thank all of you for your time. And again, support at get-grin.com or Adam at get-grin.com. And I appreciate all of you guys spending this time with me. And again, feel free to reach out to me even personally if you have any clinical questions, etc., about how we run things in the office. And with that, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you guys so much.